With the NFL regular season and therefore the fantasy football season coming to a close here very, very soon, I wanted to give a couple players that I think are really interesting buys that you can buy actually right now if you don't have any trade deadlines going on, or at the start of your new years and whenever trades do reactivate again. These are really interesting players that I think could see an increase in value in 2022 that could be had for really, really cheap right now because we're not really expecting a whole lot out of them, or they're not actually contributing to any fantasy football rosters right now. So let's get right into the video. So as I mentioned, I have three players that I think are really, really interesting buys right now. And these are players that you might be able to just have added in as throw-ins in your trades, or can be acquired really, really cheap in startups before free agency or anything like that, that I think could see a really big increase in dynasty and fantasy football value that you can either flip or actually use for production in 2022 and beyond. So the first player I want to highlight is Ronald Jones, running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And contrary to popular belief, Ronald Jones is actually pretty good. I've been a Ronald Jones truther for the past 2 years, and he is actually a very good running back. Many people have actually forgotten that he ran for nearly 1,000 yards on under 200 carries last year, averaging 5.1 yards per carry, scoring 8 total touchdowns, and finished as the RB19 back in 2020, splitting carries with Leonard Fournette. Many people also have forgotten the 3-game stretch that Ronald Jones had without Leonard Fournette in 2020, where he averaged 23 touches, 125 yards, and 0.7 touchdowns per game, still only on 65% of the snaps in that 3-game series. But he was averaging well over 100 total yards per game. He scored twice in that 3-game stretch. He was fantastic for fantasy football without Leonard Fournette as the only running back on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But I get it. He's not a good pass catcher. He's fine, but he's not that good. But what I will say is that I think I want to see where Ronald Jones actually ends up next year, because he is a free agent, and see if it's possible that he signs somewhere where he could either split snaps on the ground, kind of like what Melvin Gordon is doing with Javonte Williams, or be the first and second down back to a pass catching running back on third down, kind of like what we see with like JD McKissic doing with Antonio Gibson. I think there are a couple teams where he can sign and have those kind of roles, and those teams are going to be really, really interesting, because if he finds a team like that, that could be really big for his fantasy value and boost him up back to what we saw in 2020 and a lot more than what we're seeing from him right now, thus increasing his dynasty value. And like I said, there's a handful of teams that I think he can do that with next year. And the first one is the LA Chargers. I mean, let's face it, Austin Ekeler is great, but I don't think for his longevity, it's going to be the greatest thing ever if he receives 300 plus touches every single year, like he's kind of on pace to do this year. I think the LA Chargers see that. I think they know that. And I think that they also recognize that Austin Ekeler and their running game was really, really good even 2 years ago, back when Austin Ekeler was sharing a lot of the snaps with Melvin Gordon as the more first and second down player. The second team I think that could kind of do something similar is the New Orleans Saints. Basically, everything I just said about Austin Ekeler can also apply to Alvin Kamara. And especially when we think about Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, how good they were just a few years ago, I think Ronald Jones can kind of give something similar to that in the New Orleans Saints offense, to alleviate a little bit of the workload that Alvin Kamara has been receiving this year, which means he gets less wear and tear, less opportunities for him to get hurt, and thus increasing his longevity on the New Orleans Saints. The third team I want to highlight is the Atlanta Falcons. Basically take everything that we thought that Mike Davis could do or could be on this Falcons team back in last offseason in August, and then apply that to an actually good running back in the NFL. The fourth team is the Seattle Seahawks, and this is a team actually where I think that he has a real opportunity to win the starting job, either through talent or through the injury ladder. I mean, number one, Chris Carson is the small cap casualty this next offseason and actually just had neck surgery. So his future in the NFL is really up in the air and is a big time question mark with the Seattle Seahawks. Rashad Penny, we know, can't stay healthy and actually has his 5th-year option declined by the Seattle Seahawks, which will make him a free agent next year as well. Then, you got Alex Collins, Travis Homer. None of these guys are it. So Ronald Jones actually has a really good opportunity on the Seattle Seahawks to be the guy on a run-first offense with what I expect to still be a Russell Wilson-led team next year on the Seattle Seahawks. The fifth team I want to highlight is the Miami Dolphins. Basically just very similar to the Seattle Seahawks. This is another team where they don't have a long-term starter in place on this team. I don't think it's Duke Johnson. I don't think it's Myles Gaskin. It's not Malcolm Brown, any of those guys. So Ronald Jones could come in on this Miami Dolphins team and actually be their starter next year. And I think that would be another fantastic place, an opportunity for him to show a lot of fantasy football upside and relevance and increase his value next year with the Miami Dolphins. And then sixth, worst case scenario, I think, is that he just re-signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they keep all of their options and their team basically consistent every single year. And he re-signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers behind Leonard Fournette. And if that is the case, then he's basically just another really valuable handcuff to Leonard Fournette, which is the same situation that he's in right now. Thus, the price that you paid for him now or anytime soon is going to be kind of a wash because you're just paying the same price as what he has and the opportunity that he has now. And that is going to be his opportunity moving forward. So it's not a loss in value at all. It's just kind of a missed opportunity in terms of gaining an asset that could gain a lot of value. He's just kind of the same guy and you just paid for what he is already. The next player who could gain a lot of value and another player that we might have somewhat forgotten about is DJ Chark, who had a season-ending injury just a couple weeks into the 2021 season back in October. But what is great about DJ Chark is that he is also a free agent next offseason, meaning that he can not only get out of Jacksonville, get away from Trevor Lawrence and that offense, but actually pick a team where he can be valuable again for fantasy football. And when I would say that he needs to be valuable again, I think we need to readjust our expectations because he might not be the alpha wide receiver like he was a couple years ago on the Jaguars when he had his massive breakout second-year campaign, but he could go somewhere where he could be a really strong wide receiver too, especially a strong wide receiver too on a good offense with a good quarterback. So there's definitely a couple landing spots where this could take place for DJ Chark. Number one, again, the LA Chargers. Basically, just imagine a younger Mike Williams across from Keenan Allen getting targets from Justin Herbert. Like, that just sounds so nice for fantasy football. And that could be what DJ Chark ends up being in next year in that situation if the Chargers let Mike Williams go and they sign a younger and probably cheaper version of Mike Williams in DJ Chark. The second one is the Green Bay Packers, and this could work for a variety of reasons. Number one, it could work if he is the wide receiver 2 across from Davante Adams with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I don't think that's a realistic opportunity though, because I expect Aaron Rodgers to be gone. And I also expect Davante Adams to sign somewhere else because he too is a free agent. But that's one low probability outcome, but that is an outcome that could happen if he signs on the Green Bay Packers. The other one, the much more likely outcome, I think, is that he is actually the wide receiver 1 for Jordan Love on the Green Bay Packers. After Rodgers is traded, like I said, Davante Adams signed somewhere else. He actually comes in and it's just him, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Allen Lazard, all those other guys, Amari Rodgers out of the wide receivers with Jordan Love. And I think, he has that opportunity to be the alpha like what he was on the Jacksonville Jaguars just a couple years ago if he is the wide receiver 1 for Jordan Love. So I like that opportunity as well. The last one then is the New Orleans Saints. And basically Michael Thomas has probably played his last game in a Saints uniform. New Orleans needs weapons at wide receiver, and Chark can help fill that void and be a guy that I think that the Saints could lean on a lot as their wide receiver 1 next year. The real question then next year is who is the quarterback? If it's Jameis Winston, that's not necessarily great, but it could be fun for fantasy because he just kind of chucks it and throws it up to DJ Chark, which could work out for fantasy. But the real question being quarterback still isn't all that impactful for DJ Chark's ability to gain a whole lot of value next year if he actually is the wide receiver 1 on the New Orleans Saints. The last two names I want to mention are both former starting quarterbacks who are currently backup quarterbacks, but could end up signing a starting job next year, either as a bridge quarterback or as a legit 1-year starting, kind of like what we see from Andy Dalton or Ryan Fitzpatrick. And those two quarterbacks are Marcus Mariota and Mitch Trubisky. And I get it, these two aren't great, especially Mitch Trubisky, but quarterbacks are very easy assets to flip for good ROIs once they become starters. Going back to Andy Dalton and him as an example, he was going for basically peanuts in 2020 when he was a backup in Dallas as the backup quarterback to Dak Prescott. We're talking 4th rounders or later, Michael Pirine, OJ Howard, peanuts. He was going for peanuts in 2020. Fast forward to 2021, he signs with the Chicago Bears as the starting quarterback before the NFL draft. Even after the NFL draft, when they drafted Justin Fields, you could still get somewhat significant value for him, and especially a lot more than what you were paying for him when he was a backup in Dallas. You can pull in, second round picks, Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Green. You could package him with a second or with another first, a late first, for an actual starting quarterback like Carson Wentz or somebody in that kind of a range. Like, you could actually flip him for a lot more than what you paid for him, and it's easy return on investment once they become starters. That's the type of buy and sell flips that I could see potentially happening with Marcus Mariota and Mitch Trubisky, who are both free agents next year, especially in a very weak quarterback class in 2022, and with a lot of teams that are in a lot of quarterback trouble next year. We're talking about teams like Pittsburgh, Washington, Carolina, Houston, Denver, New Orleans, Philly. Like, all of these teams potentially could have a new quarterback next year. There's not enough quarterbacks in this 2022 class. And even the quarterbacks that are in this class, some of them, even at the top, are going to probably not play the entire year and are going to need a bridge quarterback to come in and start for them over the first however many weeks of the season, like what we're seeing with Jimmy Garoppolo or even Andy Dalton, again, going back to that same example. So we could see either Marcus Mariota or Mitch Trubisky signing actual starter deals next year on new teams. And if that is the case, the price that you pay for them now is not going to be the price that you're able to sell for them later on down the road. And that's just a really quick and easy flip and return on investment in these quarterbacks if they actually do become starting quarterbacks. So those are a handful of players that I think could gain a lot of value moving forward in 2022 that you can just acquire super cheap right now as throw-ins in deals, or very, very cheap, and just see if their value actually does increase with not a lot of downside based on the price that you're paying for them right now. And if you would like to watch a recap of the entire week 16 slate of games, you can click right up here and watch that video. With that all being said, guys, thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch y'all later.